Thank you, Kayla. Greetings and welcome to today's presentation titled Including and Elevating Fathers in Family Mental Health Support. Before we begin, we would like to remind you that this is a safe and friendly space for positivity and productivity. There are a few housekeeping items I'd like to quickly go over. This presentation is being recorded, and the recording link, slides, and a certificate of attendance will be sent via email to everyone who attended today. This information will also be available on the Federation of Families website and NASHBID's YouTube channel and website. Please use the chat pod to share your name and state, ask questions, and or share information with the group that pertains to the presentation. Closed captioning can be viewed by clicking the CC at the bottom of your screen or clicking the link in the chat pod to view in a separate window. We also have an ASL interpreter who is spotlit on your screen. When the presentation ends and you leave the meeting, a brief survey will show in your browser. Please take a few moments to share your comments and thoughts about today's presentation. We would like to give SAMHSA a special thank you for sponsoring this presentation. And again, thank you all for joining us. I will now turn this over to Dana Aspey, Director of National Certification and Project Specialist at the National Federation of Families, who will share an overview of today's webinar. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you so much, Kelly. James, if you could quickly go to the next slide. And we really thank SAMHSA so much for hosting this webinar. And then if you'll show that next slide. Oh, sorry about that. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Dana Aspey from the National Federation of Families. During all of our activities, we want this to be a conversation. So please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and ask questions for Dr. Rodriguez throughout today's presentation. When you are asking questions or via the chat or at the very end of today's time together, when you unmute, we're going to ask that you use family-driven language that is trauma-responsive, strengths-based, avoids blaming caregivers, is inclusive, person-first, respectful, non-judgmental, and consistent with our actions. You can go to that next slide, James. In our presentation today with Dr. Rodriguez, he's going to be describing the importance of supporting fathers in mental health programming. He's going to give you some tools and strategies that family peer specialists and others can use to support fathers of children with mental health and substance use challenges, including serious mental illness or serious emotional disturbance. And finally, we hope that you can learn some skills that help peers and providers successfully engage fathers in their own recovery journey. And now I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. James Rodriguez. He has a very long and impressive biography, many years in the field of mental health, now working to teach others about how to support other people in their mental health journey. And Dr. Rodriguez is a dad, a soldier, a professor, a community leader, and an advocate for the well-being of children. He currently serves in the position as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Fathers and Families Coalition of America, which he is now going to tell you more about.
Thank you today. Thank you, Dana Aspey, who helped me out a lot. I felt like I was back in college, putting in papers to do this presentation. And some of my former students at USC, University of Southern California, said it was payback. Also, I see a couple of my colleagues over there, but before that, I want to say thank you, Dr. Linda Gargan, for the invitation, my colleagues, my friends. I usually start off trainings with a quote to get us in a good mindset. There'll be a few, but this is from a philosophy from Bruce Lee. And the philosophy is, be water, my friend. Empty your mind, be formless, shapeless like water. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to go down a journey. And in this journey, there's another quote by Lao Tzu, who said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So what I hope today to do is to introduce not just Fathers and Families Coalition of America, but concepts and theories that I've found over the years that have been very successful working with others You'll learn maybe some different techniques. I won't be a traditional clinical social worker in the terms of this is a philosophy, but most of it is driven by cognitive approaches and Eastern philosophies like Kintsugi, Ikigai, Ichigo, and also logotherapy, which talks about the neurological or the spirit or the soul of an individual. So I'll talk about that as well. And hopefully have a conversation. It seems that more and more there's this push to how can we have fathers involved in mental health? And recently, I just had a couple of opportunities to speak in the last couple of months, one with the state of Maryland for veterans who struggle with mental health and wellness, who are also fathers, and in the city of New York last week. And recently, yesterday, I was training colleagues and professionals like yourselves or maybe parents. And I said, if we are going to, as the intent of this webinar, to not only raise awareness, but to help improve the outcomes for children and their well-being, well, that also means that we must put more effort into the focus of fathers. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of programs that specifically target mental health or mental wellness for fathers. There's a lot of maternal child programming, probably more child focused, but limited for fathers. And that's one of the things that hopefully we can today walk away with, that some strategies that we could take for ourselves. I did share with the class that there's the 3 E's, and I'm hoping to introduce those. And it's through the art of discovery. And this art of discovery, and most of the time when I teach, I talk about a word called neuroplasticity. And I usually joke around, and I said, I've got the perfect shaved head to tell you in the back of the brain is the amygdala where all your emotions reside, but it's this little highway that we've got to get to the prefrontal cortex that makes it a challenge for us to get from emotions to logical thinking. So how do we go from psychological drivers and motivators that aren't being overwhelmed by what I call meta conversations or meta emotives? And we'll talk about that. But what it really is, it's called neuroplasticity, in that we're creating a new pathway, a new habits, new learning, and through the discovery of the 3 E's, explore, experiment, and execute. Explore, experiment, and execute. We can help others that we're working with and ourselves to have the best of what they're going to receive. And those are called positive outcomes in the journey, with the four even more than, even more beautiful, even more resilient, even more precious, and even more present. And today I'm going to talk about some of the strategies that we use to help elicit the beauty of a person, the preciousness of a person, the resiliency of a person, and how they can become more precious into the next generation. Often that we use these different trainings throughout our program. And this is just a listing of some of the stuff that we do for Fathers and Families Coalition America. I'm not going to get into all of it, but at the very core, you'll see stuff like number 3 or number 4 or number 5, where it's unique that what we tie in this nexus of helping others, and specifically fathers, is that we're coming from a different perspective, in that great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance. And that's a quote by Samuel Johnson. And a lot of fathers who struggle, but they're continuously trying to persevere, they're struggling maybe through divorce, maybe loss of contact with their child. Maybe they were in the military. Maybe they went through some form of trauma. Maybe the trauma has had them and they have not been able to overcome that trauma. What we share with them is that's okay. That's called acceptance. And from the acceptance part, we can get to the next part of our journey, which is the great works. It's not performed by strength, it's the perseverance. So hopefully this journey today, when we go through this process together, we can look at how can we increase healthier outcomes for fathers so that they can give that to their children. And I mentioned generations. one of the things that if you all were in one of my class, you would realize that this generation that you're in right now, you are impacting 6 generations in the future. Each of us have the ability to generate a newness, a new pathway for ourselves. But there is some impact when a father is not in the home on children. When a father's not in the home, children without a father in the home are dramatically greater risk for suicide. I believe the statistic is 67% of those who do commit suicide, not ideation, but actually commit suicide. Single parents that live in double homes, emotional and physical neglect. And this is not because of mothers, because now we're having a greater wave of homes without a mother in the home, and the father's becoming the caretaker. What it really is balance. And I often joke around, without balance, used to be a playground place that I used to love, and it was called the teeter-totter. And if you sat on one end and a couple of kids try to make you come out of balance, one of the goals was to try to knock you off. But that's not life. A mom and a dad are the core. They're the balancer. When a child doesn't have it, it goes either down or tries to find a way for it to go up. And so one of the things that's what we promote is that fathers involved in the lives of their children, it does something great for them. And I know because I see a couple of my friends on here, I see Alex Rodriguez and Dr. Charles Woodard, and they know that probably having a child made the biggest difference in their life. Because look at all these indicators that we don't talk about: promoting male maturity, increasing trust, encourages character, fosters self-sacrifice in men. There's something about being a parent that you give yourself away to something that you created that's so beautiful. And then even when it goes through these stages, and I don't know if any of you have ever had teenagers or young adults, you're like, did I really have that child? But you give all that you can. But imagine being empty because you cannot have your child, because you struggle with your mental or emotional well-being, or you don't have access. So Fathers and Families Coalition America, one of the things that we do is we bring in different forms of training to help a father see how essential they are in the development of their child, their family, and their community, and for themselves. So what we do are a couple of trainings that I'm going to go give you some. If you have something to write down, I'm going to give you some techniques that hopefully you'll be able to take with yourself. And I'll probably go over a couple of little theories as well. But one of the things that we use is called a rescripting strategy. And I introduce a poem. And in this poem, it talks about habits. And habits is what we use, why we use techniques to enhance the brain. Because when you introduce new neurons, new way of doing things, it can take some people years with struggle to get to a new place. Viktor Frankl created this theory called logotherapy. And logotherapy has 3 core areas. One is freedom of will, one is will of meaning, and the other one is meaning of life. And I have found when we blend that with other models that I'll bring in, when a father or a mother or an individual has meaning or purpose, they can go beyond their struggles that they're having with. And that those struggles don't have to have them in their mental or emotional. They're redefining their purpose. And by redefining their purpose, I use these 4 words in all the classes I teach. It's called finding strength in imperfection. When I know that I'm not perfect as a human being, when I know that I'm not perfect as a father, as a clinician, as a leader, as a son, a brother, an uncle, a mentor, but finding my strength in my imperfection, it allows me to go through a process of being able to heal and grow as a person. And by doing that, I'm also mirroring for others who may have their challenges or they're in brokenness. But if I allow myself to stay broken and I don't go in through the exploration of an identity or redefining myself, continuously redefining myself, then my foundation of existential foundation or existential exploration is really thwarted, and I don't get the opportunity to be the best that I can. So this is something that is part of our ethos. What are your values as a professional or a parent? This philosophy of what is it that you wake up for and live by is introduced in one of my favorite core areas in FFCA's training, and it's called Ikigai. And Ikigai is 2 words. One is the meaning of, like Viktor Frankl's in Man's Search for Meaning, when he wrote that book, he's looking at the meaning of life, not just coming to a clinician for psychotherapy, but to go deeper into the neurological concepts of humanity, into our spirit, our soul, that inner discovery. If you've ever, any of you know this to be true, have you ever gone through an experience and after that experience, you feel like, man, my gut told me not to do that and I could have avoided a bad experience? That's your neurological component of you, your spirit, that dimension of your inner wisdom. And so when we work with fathers, we are pulling out their inner wisdom by also expressing, what do you wake up for? And I would ask all of you to write that down. For what do you wake up for? What is unique about each of you? And so I created this creed for the parents, and I'm going to read it slowly, and I want you to read it with me. And if you're a mom or a dad, I know today is supposed to be about how can we increase fathers in programming and mental health and wellness. But the honest part of it is, if the mothers and the fathers are not working together, you can only go so far. And so I wrote this off of a creed that's called the American Soldier. And some of you may have served in the military. And I served for 20 years, 6 months, 13 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds to be exact. And we live by this creed that has 7 values or ethos. And I thought about that, how many parents don't have their creed? But it goes like this. I'm a parent, I'm a fighter and a member of my first team, my family. I serve as a role model, mirroring the importance of impact. I will always place the family first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen child. I will give my hand so they rise. I'm disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and patient in my role as a mom or dad. I always maintain my emotions by modeling of the striving of excellence, not perfection. I am my child's first and best teacher and an expert of me and them, and I'm always willing to learn to be a better. I stand ready to meet my child's needs, protect them, and never allow them to be harmed. I'm a guardian of my children and my family. Now, if you were in the military, at the very end, there'd be this acronym. It's HOOAH, which means heard, understand, and acknowledge. But a lot of us know children that don't have someone to help them rise up when they have fallen. And because of that, we're in a role or an opportunity to help those children and help the parents so that when they do fall, that not only do we give them our hand like this versus like this. If I give my hand like this, I am pulling you up. But if I give my hand like this and you go underneath, I am there for your stability, for you to rise up. And by rising up, you start to build up and redefining your own purpose. So we start off with what's called a more story for you. And these are 5 questions that I ask all of our people to go through. So let's unpack this together. What is your unwritten story of you? Like, if I could go back in time, and I know I cannot, it's very dangerous when we turn around. Like, if I turned around and you saw the back of my head while I'm presenting, first of all, it'd be funny, but I wouldn't be focused. on where I'm supposed to go. And so what is the unwritten story of you is more for the future, not so much rewriting the past. Is this a story of new construction or restoration? In my house right now, I've got people who are redoing my bathroom, and the first construction crew came in and did such a horrible job that the new people had to come back and do a full reconstruction of the bathroom versus the restoration. When we do restoration, it takes up something that we value, and that's called time. And because of that, we limit ourselves to keep growing. What is this distractions from you for rescripting your story? The rescripting is what I mentioned about creating new neural pathways of seeing yourself and how you can understand where I'm going to go with my life as a mom, as a dad, as a human being. How can you avoid limiting yourself? The limits that most of us put on each other is based on our own experiences. And I want to give you one brief example of a person who came to see me in the military. She was so broken before she came in the military, and I was so raw and so young as a clinical. I had started my career as a combat medic, and then I became a substance abuse control counselor. And our job was trying to repair brokenness. But usually how people were repairing it was you come in for intensive outpatient and we write a plan and then you move on. But something in my heart said, I need to somehow encourage resiliency and acknowledge all of the trauma that she went through. And at the very end, was it supposed to go through fast, or did I have to follow 4 steps? Peacefulness, taking time to care for her, mending and celebrate herself. And so when I started the process of celebration, I was learning, and she, 20 plus years, has never drank, all because someone took the time to see her purpose, her value of herself, versus I'm going to go through a counseling program, I'm going to do what I have to do, and then I'm going to move on, because usually that sets up failure. So what we were setting up, which I did not know at the time, was what's called positive psychology. And positive psychology, just like Viktor Frankl, who does logotherapy, looks at how you can see the core elements of your purpose of you to promote well-being and advancing strategies that are not just philosophical, but when you apply it every day, you can be of more celebration for yourself and your community and your family, which goes into the depth of your Ichigo Ishie. Ichigo Ishie is a Japanese philosophy, and I love tying in these different philosophies in both direct practice and training with others and in my own life. So Ichigo Ishie, in a very short word, is, what are you celebrating today? Because you only get this time in your life, which is so short, but yet I've already shared your short life gives you the influence for 6 more generations, because you're generation 1. The influences of you that came from your past, like DNA, that has impacted your life along with your own experiences. But Ichigo Ishie has 5 pillars. Celebration. What is it that you're doing to celebrate another or celebrate your life or your moments in your life? Good company. Are you of good company? There's a saying in Spanish, and in English it says, tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are. Whom are you with that you can celebrate that they're a good company? When was the last time you took a moment just to be mindful? Mindfulness is the 3rd pillar. Timelessness. Shakespeare says, what is done cannot be undone. What is done cannot be undone. Meaning, while we are timelessness, we cannot go back in time. So that means in this moment today, I'll never see most of you again. I probably will see my friend Alex Rodriguez and Charles and whomever, some others that I know, but I'll never get back this moment or preparing for this moment or celebrating today and thinking about all of the people who've helped out. So what is it about inspiration is the next place? What are you doing to be a place of inspiring? And the depth of your ichigo helps you identify your ikigai for what do you wake up for. And it is based off of the Kintsugi philosophy, which teaches beauty in imperfection and the ability to come out from being broken because you identify yourself in 4 areas. And so this, if you were in my class, I would ask you to do the following. What are you passionate about? What is your passion? Not so much what is your vocation, is what are you called for? What are you called for? Your profession may be your education, but that may not be what you are professionally meant to do. So your vocation is your depth. And what is unique, or what is your purpose or mission? The deeper you get into this philosophy, it makes you understand why the people in Okinawa, Japan, have the greatest level of centurions in the world of all time, because they don't believe in, number one, retirement. They believe in a healthy lifestyle. They believe in community. They believe in celebrating each other. And if we could take that in our core day life, which I just mentioned about Ichigo Ishie, then we take in those things and we take moment by moment and we become mindful of an experience, which I mentioned the 3 E's: experience, explore, experiment, and then we execute. So if you could explore how can you increase reason for being, or Viktor Frankl's component, search for meaning, it helps a father, a mother, a child understand that they have a deep, unique, profound meaning in this world that no one will ever be able to give them. There's no one like you here today. What the world needs is you at your deepest, best version of you, which is continuously growing. And that is in your search for meaning. In the Theory of Flow by Dr. Schaefer, he talks about that there are these 7 steps for flow to happen. And I mentioned, I started off with a quote by Bruce Lee, "Be water, my friend." But think this through. Think about all the people that, if you are a clinician, that you've worked with, maybe you've advocated for, maybe you were in the military, maybe you were in a marriage that just wasn't healthy, or maybe you had a child that you love so much, but they're falling and you don't know why. Think about that. Do they have the ability to fight for themselves? Is someone fighting with them? Do you have the ability to accept your feelings as just that? What are you doing that you should be doing? And how do you create in the moment meanings of your life? And so what we do is we help people create or look into themselves with purpose and passion and create a place for them to get to the next level. And to this next level, it's called mental contrasting. Mental contrasting goes all the way back to what I said about neuroplasticity, or creating new neurons where you can see, and I use this in my class on Tuesday. I said, I want you to think this through, and maybe you take a moment. If you've ever driven on a busy highway, do you really focus on the road in the journey? And if you take that in contrast to going on a nice, peaceful country ride with maybe beautiful hills, trees, grass, maybe a lake off the side, no one on the road, just you, maybe you and someone whom you care about or people you care about, there is such a big difference in the contrast by you going down this peaceful road versus life's busy highway. And so when we create new neural pathways, because we are shifting from what is called metacognitives, overthinking our thoughts, or meta emotives, remembering the feelings of the past, that we can never go forward by creating a purpose and passion statement. Now we are using our thoughts and our visions to give out strengths and to explore a new opportunity, which goes to the very first E of the 3 E's in discovery, is explore. Then you can experiment and write it up. So if you were taking this class with me, I would ask you in this one area, who wants you to succeed? Who is your web of influence? Who is your web of influence? I know Alex Rodriguez is on here, and he and I have a unique shared relationship in that we both served in the military. We both unfortunately had to see things that most people do not need to see, but we both have a good sense of humor. We both allow that humor to bring us to our best place versus our dark place. But he knows that if he ever needs to call me at 1:30 in the morning, or I need to call him, I know he wants me to succeed. And he knows that I want him to succeed, not just in the moment, but of life. Who is it that you know in your web of influence? That's number one. Number two, what are your top 5 strengths? Because people beat themselves up often, and looking at the negatives of their life, they forget about their strengths, which goes back to Viktor Frankl in logotherapy, your neurological component of you. And in that neurological component, that's your inner spirit that knows you, that you have these strengths. And who is your best possible you in the now and the future? And by doing this, you're creating a new pathway. And if I introduce this to someone, it helps me set themselves up for seeing themselves beyond their current status or situation, or what's the term now, situationship, whatever relationships they're in. It takes them a moment to advance to what they want to do in future life. That goes to Ikigai, for what do you wake up for? And it will change over life. Your life is consistent. It's like water. Be water, my friend. It's continuously flowing. We're not supposed to be dammed up. We are supposed to flow, so that way we can bring freshness to our creator and our universe and our journey with others. So I use these different strategies and I pull it together, and I'm going to give everyone, if you want to, you can Google it after we're done. The University of California of Los Angeles, UCLA, the MARC program, M-A-R-C, has a phenomenal mindfulness component that I share. And if I had longer time, I would introduce this concept of love and kindness from a mindfulness. Mindfulness is just grounding. Grounding is a cognitive approach. And if you look at most of what FFCA promotes in wellness, it's cognitive in many elements, but it's also neurological because we address the spirit, the soul of a human being as well. So the MAC model that we use is a 4-step. First, we got to acknowledge what's going on in our world. Then we pay attention to what's going on in our world. Then we accept it. And then we choose. We choose either a new destiny, or we choose to create a new habit, or we choose to create a new pathway, or we get stuck on the same road and we just repeat it. And I give the analogy of, do you want to be that hamster on that wheel that's continuously running but going nowhere? Or do you want to take the joy, the risk, the opportunity to go somewhere deeper? And by going somewhere deeper, you get to advance and choose a new pathway. But it takes a lot of work. And I know some of us have gone through some tough times in life. And it's hard to acknowledge the tough, to pay attention to what, and to accept, and then to move forward. The moving forward, like Lao Tzu said, that step to get to 1,000 miles is the first step that's the hardest. So in that, we want to do these 6 things. Do you acknowledge your experience just as it is, or do you ruminate upon it? Because that goes back to having conversations in your head about everything that's happening, and you get stuck and you cannot. And once you get stuck, it's called schema. And we introduced something called schematic therapy. And schematic therapy usually is used for adjustment borderline personality disorders, but it has elements to remind us, I don't want to be stuck. I want to be unstuck. Because no matter what happened, as William Shakespeare says, what is done cannot be undone. Do you interrupt others when you're speaking? Are you aware of your feelings and thinking? Are you thinking about something else? These areas impact your ability to be present. Do you acknowledge your experiences as just as it is without trying to change anything? I had a conversation with someone whom I love so much, my baby girl, and she's my heart. Well, I got 3 children, so I guess I better share. Each of them are the same. But I told her a story about when I was approached by my first sergeant in the military. And I had just become what they call non-commissioned officer of the year, not only for my installation, but 5 of us were selected for all Department of Defense. And that's a great honor. But it was at a nexus where I was going to have to make a difficult choice in my life. And he said something to me, and this is unacknowledged. He said, Sergeant Rodriguez, sometimes you have to make a U-turn in life to get to the direction you want to go. Well, as a young man, I was thinking, what is he talking about? Who is this philosopher? We have to acknowledge sometimes we just have to not fight the flow of what's going on in our life. Make a right turn, create a U-turn, and we'll get to the direction we want. We have to acknowledge whatever we're experiencing instead of trying to change it so that we can go the direction. Sometimes you just got to make that U-turn. That U-turn may take you a little bit out your way, but it will help you get back on track so that you can be more attentive to what you're feeling and what you're thinking and what you need in your life. And by helping fathers realize and remembering who they are in that U-turn, like I used with a father who called me up, I said, you forgot who you were. When you acknowledge that, you make the U-turn and you get back to where you're intended to be. So then we go through the acceptance of the stage, 3rd stage of the mindfulness program that we use with my good friend, Dr. Maria Napololi. Accept your experiences, thoughts, and feelings and bodies without judgment or expectations. And then you choose to respond. There's a difference between reacting and responding. I don't know about any of you. I know I've reacted in the past when I could have taken the moment, step back, been present, acknowledged where I was at. I could have accepted, I could have paused, and then I could have responded. But when I react, then I usually come back like, wow, I really could have done something different that would have had a better outcome. And even if it didn't change the outcome, I, in my own actions, would have been a better person from it. So we use this respond versus react, respond versus react. You can try this with your children as well, because sometimes we have to ask ourselves and our children, the people whom we love and care about the most, am I responding to a situation or am I reacting to a situation? Responding creates that I'm going to make a moment to pause, which is creating a new habit. By creating a new habit, I'm telling my brain, I'm going to try things different versus being reactive. And you may know people who've been very reactive. And when we are modeling this as professionals, we are modeling whether it's for our children, whether it's for the clients we serve, whether if you're the CEO of an organization, whether you are starting something in the community, you become more mindful, it will have an impact. And these are some of the processes that we use. I always share that I share that the word try is a setup word because failure is not a fatality. Either you did it and it didn't work out the way you hoped for, or you did and it met your expectations. But when we start having conversations with others and we use the word try, or we use one of these finite words, never, must, should, have to, always, ought to, you need to, when that happens, people will shut down more times than not. And so the next time we should teach fathers and individuals, shift. So you can come up with your own words. So use could versus should. Use maybe versus must. Use want versus need. And whatever language that you want to use that becomes more infinite in the experience working with others. That also promotes what's called a lifespan of wellness. And we use techniques through motivational interviewing and schematic therapy. And I'm going to give a couple of techniques and strategies for you to use right now. You may want to have a pen and paper to use for helping yourself or working with others. But we blend motivational interviewing, which is a technique. It is not an intervention, but we incorporate and introduce schema therapy, which is brought from cognitive therapy. And then we include cognitive processing strategies. Cognitive processing strategies is a fantastic approach, primarily for military members with PTSD, but it can be used with all individuals based upon where you're at as a practitioner. So the first thing we do is we start with open-ended question. And unlike today where I'm doing all the talking, I'm usually very quiet. The second thing that we do, or the third thing we do, is you listen and you respond in brief summary statements. And it's called ask, tell, ask, reflect. Ask, tell, ask, reflect. So ATAR. And how it would go is I would listen. I'll say Alex. I'm listening to Alex. Then I ask Alex permission to share what I heard and was listening, because two things. And then I tell him what I heard, and I ask for his feedback. Now, I may not agree with his feedback, but I do not do anything else but reflect. It is a process that opens up relationship versus being a provider or a practitioner. Now you're in relationship with the person you're working with. And now there's building a core element or core value that they can hold on to. I could trust that person. I could trust that person. So in doing this, it helps the father open up. And then you create what's called in the moment. I'm going to give a few techniques for you to utilize today. And hopefully they're in this presentation. One is called audio flashcards. The other one is victory statements, using time-lapse photos, and a focus map. Audio flashcards, victory statements, time-lapse photo, focus map. The purpose of what I'm about to share is that it opens up opportunities. And if you specifically, when you're working with fathers or men, the socialization from childhood is different than when young boys and young girls are growing up. It's just different. And as men and women grow into adulthood, what was nurtured through their childhood is somewhat carried over into adulthood, where when I ask that question, who's your web of influence, a lot of men or fathers don't have maybe more than 5. But it's not the same for mothers or moms. They can call on more unless they live in isolation. And when you live in isolation, it's one of the biggest determinants, or you could go back and look for people with depression. So what we want to do when we're working with people strategically in your plan that you have before you meet, like if you meet me for the first time, you want to explore ambivalence. First within yourself, and then that may be with me. Strength and motivation. Affirm the efforts, because it's not trying, it's effort. Let me tell you 3 E's that you can put it with the other 3 E's. When you maximize your expectations with your best efforts, you promote excellence. Maximize your expectations as a professional, put your best effort forward, you are promoting excellence. So we want to affirm the efforts. Then we want to promote assimilative integration. And then I already introduced the sequence of ask, tell, ask, reflect. It's a continuum in the process of communication, but it opens up the mind, and the mind in the Goldman model, which I'm not going to train, it's one of our trainings, has 5 areas for emotional growth and health and wellness, and that is also fostered. One of the other things that we want to do before we meet with someone is avoid riding reflex. That's basically, I'm going to solve your problems before you solve them, or I'm going to do it for you. Now, how many of you by nature, you have a little bit of an enabler in you? Or how many of you as a mother or a father don't want to see your child struggle, so you'll help them out? But really the balance, remember I mentioned about that childhood teeter-totter playground equipment? When you do that, you're out of balance, because they don't get the opportunity to go up and down of life with you. So what we want to do is avoid riding reflexes. And then we create within the 4 spirits of motivational element, the 4 elements of motivational interviewing. We create a partnership, goes back to mindfulness, acceptance, compassion. That's going back to Viktor Frankl's neurological concept, the spirit, the soul being used. Evocation. That's believing that the person has the wisdom and the ability for change. We are just there as guides to help them, to help the father, to help the mother, to help the child. So as we go through this process, then we are actually just as well benefiting. Because I don't know about for you, but I benefit so much when I see other people making life changes for themselves. So we want to go deeper and showing that we understand the individual's worldview. It may not be my view. Or what's that saying? Have you tried on walking in my shoes? We may not fit in those shoes. I may wear a size 12. Alex may wear a size 15. I'm not going to fit in his shoes, but have I thought about walking in his shoes? Do I have an accurate understanding? Do I ask, tell, ask, reflect? Am I engaged with them? By doing that, we start to model excellence, and we have a greater likelihood of working with other individuals to be centered. And I want to give you a couple of examples that you can use working with others. So this is from one of the classes that I teach, our advanced practitioner credential. And this is called focus mapping. And for sake of time, I'm gonna go through it a little fast. But instead of asking an individual, what goals do you want? Shift and ask, what do you desire? that at the end of our time together. Well, this core area was from a young father, African-American. He had a beautiful, still has a beautiful little girl. She was 18 months old. The mother was Filipina, so multicultural, multiracial child. He was a single father. His grandmother and mother forced him, because that was what he told me, forced him to come see me. So I'm like, wow, you're being forced to see Dr. Rodriguez. But the first day we unpacked all of this because I did ask, tell, ask, reflect. And I asked him to draw a circle in the middle of a piece of paper and to put that. And his biggest concern was to be the best dad possible. Then what impacts each piece of being the best dad possible? There's no way that you can change a habit or create a new habit by doing this all at one time. But one piece at a time will impact or overlay the next element. And by taking this time, it helps an individual to be unstuck. So in the process, he had all these other areas. Now, obviously, I had to address depression because of one, identify, is he going to harm himself or harm someone else? But in the end, we looked at his whole life that he wanted. And I went back to, when I meet you in 10 years from now, who will you be? And he had such beautiful dreams that he had never written down. And I said, let's create the plan. Let's create the plan that the changes you would like to make and why they're important to you. Not because they're important to me, but why they're important to you. And if these things get in the way, then my life story will change, which goes back to a new story, because I have the process of him writing not a goal setting form, but a new story where he's rescripting the story of his life so he could see himself achieving all of these awesome goals that he wanted. He wanted to not be depressed. He wanted a better relationship with his own parents. He wanted to have a better co-parenting relationship. These were his desires, not mine. But by the end, each one had its own plan. And by doing that, he's writing a new story, almost a new page in his book of life. And by taking that process, it takes him from a schema of, I'm not going to make it, a schema of, I'm going to lose my daughter, a schema of, my daughter's going to move to the Philippine Islands, I'll never see her again, a schema of, that last relationship was so toxic, I'm never going to have a healthy relationship. And how many of you know people you've worked with that what's ever happened to them in their past, they bring it with them in their present and their future. But by creating this plan, it shifts. And so we do this process, which is called, there's 8 of them, and I'm not going to, or 10 of them, I'm not going to get into it, where I introduce cognitive processing. And I love this quote, how you must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How else could you become new if you had first not become ashes? It's the essence of the mystical bird, the phoenix that came out of the ashes. And that even after you burn off all this, you're going to become beautiful again. Because I mentioned that there, with the 3 E's that we have, there's 4 even more beautiful, even more resilient, even more precious, and even more present. By addressing what are your cognitive distortions, this allows you to say, okay, now I understand, man, I do a lot of should statements, or I discount the positive things I've done in my life. Because those are my 2. Those are my top 2. Maybe those are not your top 2, but those are my top 2. So whatever it is, once you identify it, then you can do something about it. But first you have to identify it, which is the first E. You have to explore what is preventing you from getting where you want to go. Then you have to experiment and go a different way and say, okay, when I start insisting I don't have positive qualities, let me redo a new neural pathways, because that road of unhealthy thinking about myself, it's under construction, it's a dead end. I'm not going down that road. I'm going down, instead of that busy highway of destruction and thought, I'm going down a very peaceful country roadway. And I'm going to make a new me, because I'm creating new pathways, I'm creating new habits, and I'm creating new learning. And by doing that, it allows you to open up. And with each one, we do something called ABC. ABC. Viktor Frankl wrote this, or I'll read both of them. An unexamined life is not worth living, Socrates. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way. To think about that, a lot of people don't believe they have the choice. They don't believe they have freedom of will. They don't believe that they have a will of meaning. They don't believe that they have meaning of life because of some event in their past. Some event is stopping them from moving forward. So we introduce the ABC, that you had this event and we accept it, we celebrate it, but it had a consequence. And that consequence is usually an emotional one. It could be physical, but it's usually emotional, which then created a belief about yourself. What if we redid the script? We re-scripted life. And we said, okay, I went through that event and it was my fault, but I'm going down a new road. Portia Nelson writes this beautiful poem, and you can go find it, but in the end, she talks about, I'm going down a new road. So what if we introduce to the people we're working with and for ourselves, I'm going down a new road because I have the freedom and the will. I'm not going to get stuck in the past. And then so what we use photos to help people unlock good, healthy memories, to tell pictures of stories. Behind me, there's I love this collage of the boxer Muhammad Ali, the advocate Muhammad Ali. And there's all these different photos, and I've met his daughter. But when I think about him as the dad, not the boxer. I think about him as the social advocate, not someone who was in the ring. I see him from different ways because I could see different pictures and different stories. What is something different about the people that you're working with that you can engage? And then we use that as what's called a transactional object, where now they're also building a better relationship with you because they see that you care about them. So what would it look like, especially for all of you who are working with others, the next time on your first session with someone, you invite them to bring in pictures of their life throughout a lifespan so that they can share the stories of their life and you do all of the listening instead of trying to get them through intensive outpatient. Or what I did for that person a long time ago in the military, I just listened versus she's got 10 appointments and only 10 appointments. So when we do that, we take it from a different perspective and we take them on, and it acts as a mode or dimension of good emotions, as well as the challenges of life. But there's one key thing that I wrote earlier, is that in Perseverance by Samuel Johnson, great works are performed not by strength, but by perseverance. So we acknowledge, but they went through it. And then they get them to the emotions of the here and the now. And so we use this time-lapse approach working with individuals, especially for fathers, because most of them will show pictures of them when they were very young and athletic, and then they'll have pictures of their child because these are high points in their life. They may not bring the low points, but you can start filling in the gaps. It increases something that a lot of fathers may not have grown up with. I'll date myself. So I'm a child of the 60s, and those who were born in the 60s started the biggest wave of no longer being in a home with both mother and father. So it's the biggest wave of where both are not being mirrored, the strengths of both mother and father being mirrored to their children. And when we don't have that mirroring, it's easy for us to forget the strengths of whom we were intended to be. But when we use the model of appreciative inquiry, it allows us to ask themselves a couple of things. And I have 3 different suggestions for you to consider for yourself and working with others in the appreciative inquiry process. Instead of what challenges have you had since the last time, or what's happened to you since the last time we've met, ask what victories you've had in your life. Instead of asking someone you're working with, can you share, flip into I'm wondering. Instead of saying, tell me, go, I'm curious. You see, one is very directive. The other one opens windows of opportunity. And we use something called audio flashcards. And this is how it goes. And so I'm going to invite all of you to write this down and do this for yourself, whether you're going to do this, and I'm going to do it for myself. And I'm going to ask my daughter, my beautiful 20-year-old daughter, to do the same thing for her. Most of us have something called a smartphone. And what you would do is the very first time you meet with the client, a father, mother, you can draw out the strengths that you've observed in that first meeting. So in that first meeting, you record the strengths that you see about them. And then appropriately, you email it to them. Or if they are okay with it and it's in your protocol and you have a company phone, you can text a message to them. You send that audio flashcard to them because it's part of the schema therapy techniques of showing someone their strength within. When they get it, you ask for them to reflect on it. Every time that they come in to see you, instead of you asking what's happened since the last time we've met, they come in with a homework assignment. So this is my homework assignment for you. What is the victories of your life that's not related to work, that's not related to education, that is something that goes deeper, that goes into your meaning of yourself, like ikigai? What is the purpose, the passion of your life? For what do you wake up for? What is the victory of your life? So from the next time we meet, you come in and you come back, and now you know, I've got to tell James something positive about my life. Well, that not only is schema, it goes back to Siegelman's PERMA model, positive emotions. And you see what's happening is each time you see them, they come in with a victory, you come in and let them know the strengths that you see in them. By the 4th time, you start to record this together. So if I was with Charles, I would say, Charles, these are the strengths I see in you. And Charles would come right behind me and he would acknowledge and share some other strengths he sees about himself in his growth as a human being. And then by the 6th time, I'm no longer the voice. The voice is only Charles. The voice is whomever you're working with, because no matter what's happened, even if they've been broken, even if they've had a hard life, they can heal themselves with something more precious. And that more precious is their inner self. And they can mend themselves and they can celebrate themselves. So you do it on the 1st meeting to the 3rd meeting. The 4th to 6th meeting, it becomes a collaborative. 7th meeting, you're the one that's the witness. And you keep sending it to them. And this will help them move beyond, and it will allow them to see not only the past and acknowledging it, but looking forward to the future and helping, as that poem or that statement by Viktor Frankl, coming out of the ashes or burning themselves to remove the maladaptities, the masking strategies, the intense schemas that people use. It helps them with their neurological plasticity to say, you know what, I'm going down this new pathway because I'm creating a new neural pathway for myself, a new way of doing things. So I'm going to get beyond some of this because I'm looking at the time. I also want to leave it open for questions and answers. But one of the key things that even for myself, sometimes I like to talk. I need to be what? Silent and be present. Silent and be present. In Ichigo Ishie, one of the things that I mentioned about the 5 pillars was being a place of inspiration, be inspiring. Being inspiring sometimes is just allowing you to be present and hear. To hear and smile and take in so that that person that you're working with, they know that you see the beauty in their imperfection. And as I did my trainings for FF's Fathers and Families Coalition America's classes, I start off the first class is, we are going to go into this together, finding strength in imperfection. Finding strength in imperfection. You can't do that if you're always being not present. So I want to go back and just say, I know I was supposed to leave at least 30 minutes for Q&A, so I went over a little bit. But I do want to share that there are different things that I believe that if you're going to do to change your life, something in your life has to change. And that's one of the things I share with people whom I'm working with. To change your life, something in your life has to change. And today, I hope that of all the things that there was so much that I just pushed out at you, if you could take in a few things. One, consider the philosophy of Ikigai. What are you passionate about? What are you passionate about? What do you love? What does the world need from you? What are you good at? Because you are the only one with that talent. How can your vocation, which is your true calling, draw people into a healthier place? What is it that you need to increase your own mission in life? And what are you doing to be the process of Kinsigu, which I'm going to close with? Kinsigu is a Japanese art form. And in this art form, this teacup was shattered that was supposed to be a ceremonial teacup made in China in the 1600s. And the Japanese leaders sent it off to China to get fixed. But when it came back, it looked worse because they put this broken piece of teacup together with metal clamps. Sometimes when we've been broken, we go to something worse and we come back worse from it. So he asked his artisans to create something called Kinsigu. And in the Kinsigu process, they started the process to say, even though it's broken, we're going to fill it in with something more precious. The more precious was gold and silver, primarily gold. Because in order for us to heal our wounds and to transform our fault lines, our cracks, we can't force them to come together with clamps, but we can fill them in with something more precious. And when that vessel or that teacup or you or I, when we are filled in with healthy alternatives, something more precious, not only do we look more beautiful, but we're actually expanded in size. And that we can give that to this generation and to the next. I want to read this quote. "My storehouse burnt down. There's nothing to obstruct the moon." Misuto Mashi, 1657 to 1723. It's okay for your storehouse to be burnt down as long as you can see the moon and you can build anew. And that's the part of discovery that I believe so much in our organization, so much for the way that we are able to promote the four even more beautiful, even more resilient, even more precious, and even more present. So I just want to say thank you, Dana. I know that you want to leave some time for questions and answers, or some concepts, and we can chat now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rodriguez. You've definitely inspired a lot of folks. Got some really wonderful feedback in the chat, and we do have a few questions that have come in. Feel free to go ahead and put more questions in the chat or use the raise your hand feature if you want your mic unmuted, and you can ask Dr. Rodriguez a question live. So the first question that we are going to talk about is, does Fathers and Families offer a peer type of program? Is that the cafe networking program, or is there another peer-to-peer program?
Okay, so peer-to-peer support, usually the short answer is yes, men to men and women to women cafe. They meet the last Saturday monthly, physically in the city of Los Angeles, but thank goodness for technology. I joke around, people say, you know, before COVID, I said, but, you know, yeah, I'm all right with this BC because we got more resources to use. So if you go to our website, I think it's a contact form or something to that effect. And you could just say, hey, I want to be part of that men to men, that women to women cafe.
Great. That's awesome. So is there a version of the training for youth? When that question was asked, you were talking about Ikigai and thinking about your web of influence. Do you have any youth-based trainings?
Short answer, yes. What we do is we have something that's called the OR Leadership Development Program. And I think I saw someone that took it before. The OR Leadership, if you can imagine being in a boat, and when you're rowing a boat, usually your back is to your destiny. So as you're rowing, you are going this direction. Now and then you'll glance, but you're leaving where you were going from to where you're at. And what we use with the OR leadership, it has four modules, and it's for youth have gone through it, especially teenagers or young adults. And we've done it with UCLA and professionals. But the reason why I like it, even though it says it's a leadership program, a lot of youth like it because they can see the strength in themselves. And I'm looking forward to using this, as I said, the 3 E's, explore, experiment, and execute soon with children of incarcerated parents to see how they can elicit themselves. So.
Great. We had someone ask a specific question about one of your earlier slides when you were talking about the impact of not having a father in the home on children. And they wondered if you knew if there was any breakdown on this data by race. Are you familiar with any of that?
Let me go back to that slide. I think I know what you're talking about.
Slide number 7, really early on there.
Yeah, I have to go find it. You know, statistically, some of this data that you look at is black and white. And what I mean by that is it doesn't take into account of the, and I think this is the one that they're talking about right here, about Latinos or Latinx or Hispanic, because there's such a great diaspora, or Asian Americans, or definitely Native Americans. So it's an overrepresentation, I suppose, of white and black versus across all of the landscape in the United States. But predominantly, at one time, I think it's 71% African American households, and 71% of African American households, and 67% of Hispanics where the couples are not married. When they're not married, early in the relationship, Black fathers are the most involved. but then they drop off.
Interesting.
So I could get the data for you, but it was done by I want to say the National Institute of Mental Health and the Office of Performance Research and Evaluation at the Administration for Children and Families, I know has that report.
Great. Excellent. I'm going to share one more question from the chat, and then we're going to let Eddie come on screen to ask a question. So someone in the chat asked that you mentioned neuroplasticity. What is the best way to increase neuroplasticity? Any suggestions you have?
Okay, so in the training that when you get a chance to go through our class, one of the modules that we train is DISC, D-I-S-C, and it's a personality assessment, but it's more than that. It's also examining your psychological and your emotional drivers. What are your motivators? What's your ideal environment? And then what are your behavioral tendencies and styles? When you see that, you unpack it, then you say, I'm going to create a new habit. Like, how many of us have said, I'm going to lose weight? And then you end up finding yourself at Dunkin' Donuts, for an example. That is not a new habit. That's just saying you're going to lose weight. But to lose the new weight, or like my friend Alex, how he had a greasy hamburger, that's not going to lose weight. What you have to do is say, I can't have that greasy hamburger. I can't have that Dunkin' Donut. I may want it, but I don't need it. And there's the difference. What we need versus want. And when you get into that habit, there are three things that has to take place. And that's a good question. So I'm gonna park right there. First, you have to be okay that to create a new habit or neuroplasticity, it takes time. And it takes being repetitive. And that allow yourself to think how beautiful our brain is, how marvelous our brain is, in that when we do repetitive tasks over and over again, we can adapt and change our environment, our mindsets, the way we think. But it takes repetitiveness. That's number one. Number two, like I mentioned, looking at the busy highway versus a country road, what is your barriers for that? And then the third thing is going back to that Ichigo Ishii framework and follow those 5 things and know that you could celebrate yourself, even in your finding strength, even in your imperfection. When you do that, so that, okay, I did go to Dunkin' Donut, but you know what? I'm not gonna beat myself up over that. And I'm not gonna go starve myself for that choice. Now I'm just gonna be conscious of it. I'm gonna know that that's something I want to avoid. I'm gonna create a new pathway, a new habit. But it takes repetitiveness. By doing that, then you build a new pathways to go through your neuroplasticity.
Great, thank you. I don't know if you want to take those slides down now that we've.
Oh, yeah, okay, I apologize.
Oh, no worries. I'm going to invite Eddie Atkins to come on and ask a question now.
How you doing? Thank you so much for taking my question, and thank you so much for this presentation. I didn't know where it was going in the beginning, but I'm so glad that I stay on. You imparted a lot of good knowledge, not only to myself, to other people that were listening to this, and I thank you so much. And I work with young people, but I also work with adults on addiction and recovery. And some of the things that you said about the renovation and the reconstruction, and it made so much sense, as well as the schemas, because this weekend when I was working with folks, they just kept talking about why people continue to have a recurrence of symptoms, and some of the things that you explained, a lot of times they continue to look back instead of looking for the future, and it made a lot of great sense. I just want to thank you so much for all the things you imparted on us today. And can we get a copy of your slides and your email address, please?
Thank you so much for that. I made a promise to Ms. Aspie that I would have PowerPoint slides, not in a PowerPoint, but in a PDF file that's protected and then you can print it.
Great.
Thank you for that.
And he's the second person who's asked if we can share your email address as well. So
Oh, my email. Okay. So let me I think I could type it in the chat.
absolutely. And we can put that in the follow-up
Where
email as well.
is send the chat to, it just says Daphne. I don't see everyone.
So we have 2 more questions. One's really quick. Do you do any of these trainings in Spanish?
Lo siento porque no puedo hablar muy bien español, pero yo tengo gente que ahora un clase para faculty. See, I just slipped. So I have actually I see one on there, so I'm gonna call her out, Ana Figueroa, but she's not even moving. Her picture's just frozen. We do a faculty training, and in 2023, I've really opened it up. You can go to our website, and you could become one of our faculty members, and then use our materials to train. All of our stuff is in English and in Spanish, all of our curriculums.
Oh,
So when we give out participant manuals, they're you choose one or the other.
okay.
But my Spanish is only good enough to get us from point A to point B. Oh, not Taco Bell. That's not a Spanish word.
All right. Well, unless we get any more questions in the chat, which you might have room for one more if someone pops something in there, I have one other question. Can you share some of the books that you have read and podcasts that you listen to that give you inspiration?
Okay. All right. This is where you all might want to write down, because now she asked me something that's creative. I'm going to ask you all a question, and I can't chat it because I don't know how to do that. But if you could chat this, someone who's got the ability to do for all, do you want to be the arrow or the target? This is just a question. Are you the arrow or are you the target? Maybe Mr. Rodriguez over there, Alex Rodriguez, I see his big old, he needs to shave that. He doesn't look very military anymore, and he's not high and tight. Which one would you rather be, Alex, the target or the arrow?
I would let the arrow, of course.
Okay. So I love Matthew McConaughey's Green Light, because that one little audible green light, beyond it being a great narrative, and if he gets money for this, I don't know if I get any royalties, but he breaks down the concept, which is also in Kinsigu, because to be the target is more important than the arrow. The arrow has too many things that it needs to hit center mass. So here in my house, you see this dartboard on here. I've only hit it one time bullseye, and I called my daughter to tell her, and she said, no, I didn't. I just put it in there. So to get it in the center mass means the arrow has to adjust for wind, humidity, the strength of the person pulling the bow and the string, whoever created the arrow, the feathers on the tips, and the tip itself, and the weight. But if you are the target, then people are drawn to you. So what is it that draws people to you to be want to be center mass? Now, the other books, this book right here, Kinsigu, phenomenal. This poor book here has been beaten up so much. I think it's in the references. Ikigai, it's falling apart. The book of celebration, make the art of making the most of every moment, the Japanese way, Ishigo Ishie. There's another book that I love. Well, I don't love no book. I like books. Mindfulness, A Practical Guide by Tessa Watt. So there's different books, but I think for, just pure driving and listening, that Matthew McConaughey Green Light. And I think about that so often in life. Like, I don't know how many people are still on here today. Today, you all decided to go with me on a green light, because instead of life's constant red lights, we just kept on going for a journey. And just think about that. And it goes back to one of his movies, All Right, All Right, All Right. Okay, next question.
Yeah, we got one question privately. This one is, how would you approach a father who has a special needs teen getting closer to adulthood in terms of catering to how the teen perceives trying to make how the world works without being focused on disability rights, and how to approach the teen with the disability in mind, but not having to make them adapt to a non-ADA centered world?
Okay, that's deep. I'm gonna unpack it a little bit. I'm gonna probably ask a friend of mine to give his insight. And so I'm gonna use a little quick story and get to it. Roberta Chavez, one of my best friends in childhood, her little sister had so many severe disabilities. She was autistic, she was blind, cerebral palsy, but so intelligent. So I don't look at the word, I really I do my best not using the word disabilities or handicap for sure. I just look at, hey, I'm a human being. And I went from left at home, came back from special forces, combat medic training, surprised the family. She came back home from her school and just knew it was me right away. Just knew it was James. I don't know how. Maybe it was the sound of my voice because it was surprise. Now that's very severe. But my friend Alex here has a little baby girl whom he loves, who I love. And he has 2 daughters. And one of his daughters said on a phone conversation, how does she know that's James? And Deja is getting me to fly all the way from Phoenix to Houston for her 18th birthday to celebrate her. For some children, and I have a family member that has this, it's got to be one of the toughest things as a parent, because you know your lifespan is probably, all of us know we are not made to outlive our children. We know that, right? And we all know that we're going to probably have to let go, if we have not already, one of our parents physically in this world. But I believe the neurological essence of a human being, and I mentioned that the spirit, the soul of a human being is eternal. So for me, I would have to share with the parents, it starts with you first, being able to let go and be knowing that if you have that, remember that web of influence, you get a good web of influence for that young boy or that young girl. Because with that, they're going to be successful. You holding on to making them 12 years old will not work. Even because there's nothing you can do, but maybe that's a better question, if you don't mind, Dana, because he and his wife just had to go to court to do something that I feel like crying when I mention it. But if you could just take 30 seconds, Alex, to address that.
Yeah, and we'll have to wrap up because we are at the hour.
Yeah, whenever it comes to special needs, that's my heart. My daughter has autism. She has traumatic brain injury, ADHD. It's like there's global delays. And so it has been a very challenging and time with my wife and I. But at the end of the day, we just thank God for her love and her joy. And so anyways, let me wrap it up. If you have any questions about what that looks like when they're about to reach adulthood, which in Texas, we've been finding out a lot of different things. Every state is different. But in Texas, once a child reaches 18, they're legally an adult. And as a parent, you don't have any rights or say of that child because they are no longer a minor. So you cannot make executive decisions. You cannot be in the doctor's office with them to make those decisions. And for a child like mine that doesn't have that perception or understanding of a regular 18 or 17-year-old and still has some of the IQ of a 2 or a 1-year-old in some aspects, it is very important that you start to navigate this system at an early stage and finding out what is it that I need to implement to protect them, to be able to make decisions, to make a trust fund and all that. So we're going through guardianship right now. and we'll be going to the courts in July. She'll be turning 18. So I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. And if you want to talk on the side more about it, what did that look like? What could it possibly look like for you in your state? You know, I definitely would love to help you navigate that, as me and my wife have been able to learn and understand more about being more of an advocate for our children.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Dr. Rodriguez. Lots of positive feedback in the chat. We really appreciate you being here with us today. And thank you to everyone in the audience for your great questions. And look out for a follow-up email with slides and Dr. Rodriguez's email. And please make sure to take our feedback survey. Kelly, I'll let you close it out.
Right. Well, thank you again, Dr. Rodriguez, and you, Alex Rodriguez, for sharing your story. Like Dana said, we will be sharing the slides, recording link, and a certificate of attendance. We'd like to thank SAMHSA again for sponsoring this presentation. And thank you all for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care. Bye.
I'll stay on. Just give me a second, okay, Dana?
Thank you. Bye-bye. Great.
Thank you. Gracias.
Gracias. Muy bueno.
Huepa.
Alex Rodriguez, I thought that was the baseball player.
Es lo que dice toda la gente.
Bendiciones a todos. Blessing to everybody.
Bye-bye.
Alex, I think you have to get off the camera.
In one moment, we're just getting everyone out and then we'll do a debrief.
Boy.
Dr. Rodriguez, are you and Alex related, or do you work together?
Sadly, he's like my little brother, but he's not my brother. And he just text messaged me, goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was part of the debrief."
I mean, he could have been. My goodness, he definitely seemed a part of the presentation.
Oh, you know, he's a good young man, and I'm gonna let him know this. He was in North Carolina. His wife retired. He went to the Marines and he went to the Army, and then he didn't do the full 20 years. But Kenyatta, his wife, did. And I don't know what happened. Day one, we just became like I'm his big brother, and I threatened to do corporal punishment to him. But anyways, he's just a beautiful person. His wife is, and he's got two beautiful daughters. I hope he likes his son-in-law, beautiful grandson. And you know, sometimes when you meet someone that has gone through dark, and that's what I share with people, less of the people who are shattered, because they let light in. And that's a beautiful quote that was given to us in this world. So he's like that, and he lets light in. He cracks me up, but he does need to shave his beard. It looks a little too raggedy.
I know people ask for your email address. Do you want us to share your office?
You can get both. Either one is fine, or I think both. And also, I totally forgot I have, what is it called, a digital digital business card. I could put that QR code in a slide, and I'll just create, after the references, I'll put a slide for contact information. I'll put it all in there. And I'll send it to you in a second.
That
Great.
works.
Thank you so much. It was great. Lots of inspiring comments. Folks were really pleased with the presentation. So, and you came in just on time. So that was good.
Well, my ADHD was starting to kick in because all these people came in late and I was like getting distracted. And I 3 or 4 of them, I'm like, ooh, I can't, in the middle of my mind, I was thinking, ooh, I can't wait till we have a conversation. You coming in late. One of them was my consultants. I'm thinking to myself, and you've got people who are trying to come in right now. Who are these people?
There's always people who think it's like 1 hour later than it actually is because of time zones.
But I hope I did a good job. I felt fine. I really do wish that I had added something else, but that was all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I thought you did a great job. And again, there were so many compliments in the chat. We'll be sharing the chat with you so you can just kind of see what people have said. But people seem to really enjoy the presentation. So thank you very much.
And I know a few people had asked, or a couple people asked about the training. So what I can do, and I did this for New York, it's too late for our current training because we're already in it. But I usually just give anyone that goes through something I'm part of our discount, and I can give a listing of when we're gonna have future trainings, like the person who wants to know about Spanish or the other stuff as well.
Okay, that'd be great. Dana, anything else you want to add?
No, I think it went really smoothly. Went well.
Great.
Okay. Was the content fine?
Yeah.
Do you all do evaluations, or how does that work out?
So the participants will share their thoughts about today's presentation and they'll give comments. We don't give evaluations though. Are you
Okay.
looking for something like for you specifically?
No, if there was an evaluation so I could read,
Yeah.
or get some feedback.
Yes, we will send that to you along with the post materials.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And what's the next steps that I need to do? Is there anything else?
So I will send you an invoice to sign and return back to me, and then I'll submit it to accounting for your payment.
Yeah, that kind of seemed funny. Like, why are you invoicing me?
I mean, I'm not an
Like, I didn't know
accountant at
I
all,
was paying you all
but
for this. Okay. But I appreciate you all. If y'all could get, after you get time to reflect, any areas you feel like, oh, I wish you had stayed a little bit more on that or less on this, that'd be fine as well.
I thought everything's great.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're
Off to go write a beautiful grant. I got to figure out, I got to shift now. I'm going to grant writing mode.
welcome.
Good luck. I hope you get it.
Exactly. Good luck.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so
Kayla,
much.
thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.
You
You too.
too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.